set up into the controller cabinet or into the signal control, so that when the fire trucks approach, that the signal will have a chance to turn to yellow for the other directions and provide a green light then for the fire trucks to be able to make it through. There will have to also be additional warning flashers installed right there by the driveway entrance out of Red Cap Corner where the fire trucks would be exiting. The Rock Creek Fire District would be required to purchase the equipment, though, to go on their own personal or their own vehicles. But the hardware for the signal itself will be done as part of this project.
So when you said the fire department to purchase the equipment to actually change the signals?
What it is it's a special kind of a strobe light that gets mounted up on top of the vehicles that flashes at a specific frequency, and then we put little receivers up that receive that, so that when that strobe light bounces off the receivers, then it starts the chain reaction to turn on the emergency flashers and start switching the signal over. And they'll have to buy those strobe lights. Years and years ago, they were real loose and sloppy, and just about any vehicle that was fast enough at flashing its headlights could trip them, but now they've set them up where they run off a very specific frequency, so it's real hard to crack.
Do you have any idea what the cost on that is, or have you discussed with the fire department at all?
It has been mentioned to the fire department, but no, I'm not sure what the cost for the vehicles will be.
So what about that corner coming around?
The corner coming around, the current plan is as it stands, that corner will not exist anymore that way. The big sweeping right-hand turn will be removed, and the decision will be between, do we put a smaller right-hand turn, kind of like what you have at several of the signals in Twin Falls, like at the corner by the McDonald's at Costco there, Pole Line and Blue Lakes? Or do you have it just come to a hard right-hand turn, which is where there is no extra island or extra lane, you just pull up and then you turn right from the signal? Those are the two options that we are now considering that will be looked at in design.
Was all that landscaping out there, was that put in by the First Federal Complex? You know, on that sweeping curve already? I mean, are they going to have to redo that at their expense?
The way it currently appears is that it will be a city expense to landscape that new extension of the area, and that the city will be able to also choose how to landscape it. ITD has not allowed us to include landscaping expenses as part of this project. This project, we can install conduits in order to provide power to the area and to extend water to the area, but we can't include any landscaping in this project.
Such as plants and that kind of thing.
Such as plants and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Correct.
Chances are, though, I would anticipate the slight curve over a hard turn, given the fact you have so much truck traffic there.
That's the direction we're leaning. The consideration and the concern is there are many things that are better about this corner than the corner of Pole Line and Blue Lakes right by the McDonald's. However, we still only have about 350 feet worth of distance from where, if we put in a sweeping curve there, from where that sweeping curve would end and where the driveway is to go into First Federal and to the, Quick Lube and all of those. And we'll need to do what's called a weaving analysis. That's where we look at it and say, okay, for cars that are trying to get out of this lane and move over to the left lane, and cars that came straight down through from the north and are in the left lane and want to move over to the right, as they start to switch places and stuff, do they have adequate room to do that without getting, another set of accidents or having close calls and that kind of thing? And so that's an analysis that hasn't been performed yet, but it is included as part of this project. And that will probably be the final deciding factor on it.
How about a warning like they have down at Hankins Road that signals oncoming traffic that the light is about to change?
We do anticipate having the advanced warning flashers. The final speed limit for the project has not been set, but most likely it will drop to 50 miles an hour. That is a speed that has been discussed with Idaho Transportation Department. But a final speed for that section of road has not been set. it is not common to have traffic signals on 60-mile-an-hour roads. It's just a little bit harder for people to be able to come to a stop in the proper amount of time.
Ivan, how long do they leave those advanced warning signals out? I mean, forever, or do they give it a couple of years? Or?
It used to be that they were just recommended to stay for a year and then to remove them when people got used to having the signal there. I think the policy is changing on that to where they are planning on just leaving them up forever.
Okay.
I do not know for sure, but my understanding is it's currently the intention that once we install those, they will stay.
Okay. I think that's good.
Now, if they were to get another set of traffic signals just a half a mile away, then they might remove the one that would be in between them because you've already got stop, go stuff. But where there are no other traffic controls nearby, it's my understanding they intend to leave them up.
Will there be crosswalks on that intersection at all? I mean, is that, I know there isn't down at Maintenance Road and probably not sensible. I was just wondering.
It is ITD policy on all of these kinds of installations that we do include the pedestrian facilities, so we will be setting it up for crosswalks. Whether or not they will maintain the painting on those crosswalks, I don't know. In many respects, those crosswalks on, for instance, the southeast corner and northeast corner really won't be going anywhere. But we do plan to put in the curb cuts and the handicap ramps for those so that future facilities can connect it someday. These are all really good questions. Anybody else have more experience?
So will the city have to be responsible for taking care of the curb there, the street?
No, the cooperative agreement has it set up to where the city will be responsible for the power bill for this installation, but that it will not be responsible for any other aspects of the installation until such a time as you annex one or more of the roads up in that area.
Do we have any idea what the power bill on that monthly may entail?
We do. Polly, do you remember? I'm trying to remember it. Go ahead.
I think Bruce said $15 a month.
Yeah, it's really not bad. I was thinking it was $25 a month, but we're going to be using diodes for all of the signal heads. And so the diodes use a lot less energy than the other ones do. The cute thing used to be every once in a while during the winter, you'd see a bird perched up near the traffic lights because the old bulbs would get nice and warm, being incandescent ones, and it'd warm up the birds. Now with the diodes, they use a lot less energy. They don't help the birds out at all.
I'd like to, just for the folks that are here this evening, to remind the council and the staff and the residents here this evening of why this project was moved up and how the city has facilitated that.
You bet. This is a project that's been on ITD's list of places to fix for a long time. However, it's just had to compete with lots of other projects that seem to be more pressing and needing. Due to citizen participation in the city itself, the city for years now has been pestering Idaho Transportation Department. Here, a little less than a year ago, the Transportation Department approached us and said, we really want to help you guys get this in, but we are just overloaded with all the work that's been going on in the freeways and the other work that's headed on up north by Shoshone and stuff. If the city will agree to take over running the design of the project and the actual construction, but do it to our standards, we'll help fund most of it. And the city said, that sounds great. We also have money that we have collected from the developers up near that area that they have put towards that signal. And so the agreement was reached between the Idaho Transportation Department and the city that the city is going to now use all that money that it has collected towards the design of the signal. Instead of ITD designing the signal, JUB was selected, and we will be designing the signal using that money. The state is also chipping in the other half of the design fees, and then the state will be chipping in about $600,000 to facilitate the construction of this signal. Traffic signals tend to be a lot more expensive than most people would expect. Some of that is just the simple cost that those poles on each corner will run anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a piece. To put this in perspective, most people just don't understand how big traffic signals are. Each one of those little lights you see that go from red to green they're bigger than a pie tin. They're 12 inches across in diameter. So by the time you put the little thing around them for the sun blocking, it ends up being like a quarter sheet of plywood. It's over 2 feet wide by 4 feet tall. And so you hang that up way away and it gets real hard to support all that. So all the pieces just end up being expensive. However, ITD has worked really well with us. It's taken some headaches to come to an agreement between the whole situation and to get all the parties in line with what it is we plan to do and how it's going to be financed, and try to help each party protect their own interest and not exploit anybody else. And so that's how the signal has come to be.
I think that also moved it up by, what, 2 years?
Realistically, it moved it up by 2 years. According to their schedule, it means we'll just now actually be able to build it on the schedule they had wanted to, but they were a couple of years behind. And they just didn't have the manpower to get to it and to accomplish all the tasks and the items that needed to be done.
Thanks for that update.
Thank you.
You bet.
Is there any action that needs to be taken on this evening?
I just wanted to add also that one of the other partners is the Twin Falls Highway District, also is putting towards this project.
Yes, they will also be contributing towards this because they have jurisdiction over the north leg of the intersection, which is the 3500 East Road. They did try to give that part of the road back to ITD, but ITD wouldn't take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll open it to council discussion. Are we working on the environmental at this point yet?
We have done some preliminary work on it, but we have to be careful what work we do because the way contracts and things are normally set up with ITD, you can't get paid for anything you do before a contract is signed. And so all the work that we have done up to this point has been done in good faith, and we don't expect to receive any compensation for it. And it's actually been quite a bit of work just framing the project and bringing it into perspective and getting everybody to agree that this is what we're going to do.
But to kind of answer your question, we're hopeful that we're looking at a beginning of June, and hopefully a construction towards the end of September, somewhere in that area time frame.
I thought June rang in my mind.
We want to get all this information in the design and before the ITD's board, so that they can make sure that the money is allocated for this light, and which will facilitate the process of getting the light actually built.
So we need to approve the scope of work and the budget.
Yes.
Tonight.
I'll make a motion for you to approve the scope of work and budget for JV on the Red Cap Corner project. Light project.
We have a motion to approve the scope of work and budget for JEB, the Red Cap Light by Councilwoman Sheldon, second by Councilman Richard. Any further discussion? Question?
Hoobler,
Yes.
McKinley,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Sheldon.
Yes.
It is 6:30, so at this time I will we'll go into the public hearing portion for the Idaho Community Block Grant Downtown Revitalization Project, and now we'll give it back to Polly and Jeff.
Yes.
First of all, let me state this is a public hearing, so what we'll do is we'll open this to staff presentation. Once staff is done with their initial presentation, we'll open it up to the public for comment. We will follow up again with any staff follow-up comments after the public has spoken. And if there is still public that would like to speak after that, I'll allow that, and then we'll close the public hearing. Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as another introduction to myself, I'm Jeff McCurdy with Region 4 Development Association. We're the regional planning district in the area, and we help community and business leaders help develop projects and find funding for those projects that are needed in the community. We've been working with the city of Kimberly on a downtown revitalization project for over a year now. The purpose of this public hearing is to fulfill one of the requirements for the grant that we were going to pursue. So tonight I'm going to tell you a little bit about the block grant program, kind of the schedule that goes along with the program, and then a little bit about the specifics of the project that we're going to undertake with these funds. Each year, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development provide funding to the state of Idaho to create this program. In fiscal year 2012, it's anticipated that the state will be awarded $8.5 million to support this program. Now, only cities and counties are eligible for these funds. However, they can subgrant those funds to a special district, such as a water district, a sewer district, and sometimes it can be subgranted to a nonprofit organization. There's 4 categories in which you can apply for funding under this program. One is public facilities. This can be used to help with public infrastructure projects such as your water system, your sewer system, fire stations, ambulance buildings. We applied under this program last year to help with the construction of a family health service building here in Kimberly. The second category is senior center and community center type projects. These are used to help improve those types of structures that support the community at large and also the seniors in your area. There's also another category which is imminent threat. This helps community leaders make improvements for things that they couldn't really plan for, natural disaster type situations. And it can be used to help rebuild infrastructure that way. The last category is economic development, and there's 2 categories in which you can apply for funding. One is through job creation type projects. A business comes to town and they promise to commit so many jobs, and then these funds are used to put in the infrastructure to support those businesses. But the funding is tied specifically to job creation or retention. The second category is downtown revitalization, which is what we'll be applying for this year. And that's specifically to help upgrade documented substandard infrastructure in a downtown area, to help revitalize it and help bring business back to the heart of the community. In fiscal year 2012, it's anticipated that about $3.4 million will be available next year for both of these kind of economic development projects. The maximum amount that the city can apply for is $500,000. Typically, the funds go to a community that there is no match requirement, but the communities that are usually funded are ones that show the greatest need and that also have financial participation in the bill. It also must eliminate slum and blight conditions, substandard infrastructure that's documented in a plan, which was documented in the plan the council approved this evening, and it's also documented in the transportation plan that was approved back in 2009. So the community block grant applications are due annually, with the next application deadline due November 18th. That's next month. The Idaho Department of Commerce, the folks that administer the grant funds, will take the application and they'll review it and they'll score it based on criteria in the application handbook. I have a copy of that tonight for anybody that would like to look over those criteria. It's exciting reading, I'll tell you that much. Basically, they score it based on a 900-point scoring system as outlined in this handbook. It's based on various activities that the city's done and have they prepared a downtown revitalization plan. And what kind of work have they done previously to support their downtown? What's their future plans to revitalize their downtown? There's also some scoring in there about project budget and how much the city's committing to the improvements. Following their review, if it meets a minimum score, the application is forwarded to the Governor's Economic Advisory Council. This council is made up of 7 individuals throughout the state. Our local representative from our region is Kelly Anderson. He's the vice president of Zion's Bank, and he sits on that board. And what they do is they look at the applications and they can award up to an additional 100 points. So the total scoring is 1,000 points. And if it meets a minimum score, they'll invite the city to submit some additional information about the project, and that notice comes usually around mid-January, and then about the addendum information will be due the first Friday in March, so that'll be March 2nd of 2012. Again, it's rescored, it's evaluated, and it's, again, forwarded to the Governor's Economic Advisory Council for a second review. And this is done in April. At that time, the city may be asked to make a presentation to this governor, to the Economic Advisory Council, which will hear all the projects that are going on throughout this state, and then they prioritize which projects to fund. And then they make their recommendation over to the governor's office, and then the governor usually makes an announcement within about a week or so. So the city should anticipate hearing, if they're awarded or not, about the beginning of May of 2012. At that point, funds, there's some hoops that the city will have to jump through, and the funding itself won't be available until the 1st of July of next year. Because these are federal funds, there are federal strings tied to them. For example, the city has to abide by a citizen participation plan. Basically, 2 public hearings are going to be held during the course of the project. The one tonight, and then one when construction is about 50% complete. When it comes to construction, it will include federal labor standards. That's the payment of Davis-Bacon wages. That's ensuring that contractors submit certified payrolls, all of that good stuff that goes along with that. There's fair housing requirements because the funding does come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. They want to make sure that the city is promoting fair housing in their community. So there's some strings tied to that. They also want to make sure that the city is complying with handicap accessibility standards. So as part of this project, we would be working with the city on assessing handicap accessibility through all of their programs and facilities, and developing a transition plan for any impediments that are found. So that's kind of a timeline of the block grant application process. For this particular project, we're looking to improve some of the substandard infrastructure that's located south of the railroad tracks on Main Street North, to just a few feet short of the intersection of Center and Main. So it's about a 2.5 block improvements that we're looking to tackle. And as outlined in the transportation plan and in the downtown revitalization plan, some of the substandard infrastructure that we're looking at is power lines, removing the power lines from overhead and putting them underground. We're looking at putting some type of safety, I'm going to use the word bulb out, but I know that there's some things about what we can do to actually do this. But the safety of pedestrians moving from corner to corner, so pedestrians or even traffic that are pulling out into those intersections, we can create a more safe environment down there. The lighting, we want to improve the lighting. The power poles that are up there are hazardous. Right now those power poles are right in the middle of the sidewalk, and they impede the use of the sidewalks. It also creates a hazard for folks with mobility issues. And so we're looking to remove those in an effort to make handicap accessible improvements there. Looking at, there is no substandard water or sewer lines, but there is on each of the corners, there needs to be better curb cuts to meet ADA standards. So there's a gamut of things that we're looking at doing. And that looks beautiful, doesn't it? So, and that's kind of what we're, kind of a snapshot of what we're envisioning this to look like. Just to give you an idea. Cost-wise, we're looking at the budget closely. Project costs have gone up a little bit from last year. We anticipate the city has done some effort this last year to obtain some funding to help support this project. They received $100,000 through the local Highway Technical Assistance Council through their local highway investment program, and $100,000 of that has been awarded to the city to go in support of this. we are seeking $500,000 from the Community Development Block Grant. The city is committed to $93,000 of in-kind work towards the project. That includes construction oversight. It includes using city staff to put up signs, do various construction components, and then based upon the city council, it looks like that the remaining portion of the local cash that would need to be committed to is just under $196,000. Last year, the city did commit $189,000 towards the improvements, but with the grant from LTAC, we were hoping the cost would come down, but based on some projections of costs, inflation, and some other costs, we're looking about the same costs budget-wise that the city would need to commit to undertake this project. With that, I'm happy to field any questions, but otherwise, Mayor, I'll turn the time over to you for.
I think what we'll do then, we'll open it up to public, and if the public has any questions for you, Jeff, if you please stand for those, that'd be great.
You bet. Thank you.
So at this time, we'd like to open the public hearing up to our residents and citizens who might like to either ask questions or make comments about the downtown revitalization project. Seeing none, then I will open it back up to further staff or council comments. Anything else?
Yeah, on this, the plan, we are obligated to what we are submitting for this grant. I mean, we can't deviate from it or change our ideas. You know, a year from now, situations might change, or with more comment from our businesses, we may decide.
We're still developing the actual application for the grant itself. Would you like to further comment on that? As far as set in stone, we're not there.
Yeah, the application itself is still being developed. We have until the 18th to get the application submitted to the Department of Commerce. Even though we present it in the application, this is a community project, and they understand that projects evolve, and they particularly want to make sure that the input from the citizens and the business community are incorporated into those plans. So this is a budget that we, putting our best foot forward, this is what the city anticipates doing. However, they do understand that the projects evolve, there's changes in it, so the city is not necessarily tied specifically to these improvements. We are tied specifically to the area that we are. If you recall, last year, the city did adopt by resolution a redevelopment area, and it specifically identified this particular area that we would focus these funds for. So we're kind of tied to that specific area. However, the improvements can be modified and changed.
And then the budget that you have is for what we're anticipating doing with the picture you had up here, the bulb outs, that sort of thing. But if those plans change, are we still obligated to committing the 96,000? We have to, if we're awarded 500,000, we have to commit 196 under the terms of the.
Well, I believe that the way that I understand it is that we can pull back from the project itself as far as the actual plan and whatnot. So if we decided that there was a better way to go rather than the bulb outs, that we could certainly add that or change that, modify, I guess maybe is the word that I'm looking for.
The design of the plan could be.
Right, because right now our total plan is $889,000 or something for the total project cost. So as long as we continue with the plan, then we would be okay. So if let's say that our bids came in less when we bid out the project for the concrete or asphalt, and it came in less, then the city would not be obligated to put the whole $196,000 towards the project if the bids came in less.
Yeah, pretty much. In the application, though, the city does need to commit to. There's a commitment letter in there saying we will support funding what's projected the project will cost.
In excess of what we're awarded.
What we're awarded. If for some reason, if the project costs come in less than anticipated. As part of as we're closing out the grant, we have to just justify the fact that bids came in less, and we were able to find improvements that made the project more efficient. No one's going to slap your hand for being more efficient and using your tax dollars wisely. We just would need to justify that, and that Commerce is usually pretty good about working with us in that endeavor.
And then you said one of the obligations of the grant were 2 public hearings, this being one. The other, when the project is 50% completed, but I'm assuming that we're going to have public hearings before this even starts, or I would like to, because, I mean, that's kind of saying, okay, we're moving forward, here's what we're doing, and, oh, we're halfway done, what do you think?
I don't know that it's a public hearing, but I think a public meeting would probably be advised. I'm not sure about a public hearing, but having maybe an open house type thing would be advisable.
One of the things that we talked about at one of the downtown business meetings that the city had as we were developing the plan, one of the concerns by some of the people that attended that was, how is the city going to implement this plan and reduce the amount of impact that's going to be had on my business? We talked a lot about that and how the city could coordinate that. The city anticipates holding a number of community hearings with business owners, with citizens alike, to get their input, to work with the contractor that's hired, to somehow mitigate any disruption to their business that would take place. Obviously, a project like this will impact the businesses down there to some degree. The city is not at any way trying to impede business down there. The purpose of this is to improve business, but they understand that businesses do have to still operate during that time. So the city, and we discussed that the city's going to have a number of meetings to help keep some coordination between the city and business owners. One of the recommendations that we had in the downtown plan is for the city to establish a downtown advisory committee. And I think this committee should be made up of individuals that are business owners and citizens that don't have an interest, but a vested interest, financial interest, I guess, in the downtown, but are concerned about it. And I think that committee will play a key role in how, in that process, and keeping the business owners and the citizens working together to ensure that everybody gets it's a win-win situation for everybody, and not just this is what the city's pushing on us. We're hoping to make this a collaborative effort.
Yeah, I think it's imperative that we do have a downtown committee, and because some of the concerns that have been voiced to me were the impact on their business during construction, and also any parking spots that might be lost. That's a real concern, because there are minimal parking spots already. So I don't know if the bulb out is going to be, applicable or not, but that's where that committee comes in, is to help with design.
Yeah.
I could add one other thing to that, if I might. I just applied for America's Smart Growth Cool Planning, which is, if we're awarded that opportunity, they would bring people in from all over the United States that have dealt with rural communities, and they would go through and help us with the downtown plan, speaking with business owners and whatnot, as far as specifically in parking, so that it's not that this is the city's idea, if you will, but these are what some of the things that have worked in other areas, and then let the community decide and bring that back to the council for a decision on how to move forward with that.
Any further staff comments?
I just have one other question. Where our in-kind money, the 196, where's that coming from?
That's our cash donation, not in kind, right? Yeah, the in kind is $93,000, and that's not cash. The cash is $196,000, and that's coming from the street budget.
And I'm sorry, I know as part of the budget process, did we put that in the budget for this year, or will that be part of next year's budget process?
We actually, I don't recall if we have it in the budget for this year, but I have it on the sheet that we have as far as the tracking of the money on what we have for each project and what is reserved for it. We've been talking today about the Main Street South project. And so I don't recall if we actually stipulated that amount, and if I did, it was probably only $100,000 because we were under the assumption with the LTAC money that the city was only going to have to put $100,000 forth in that effort. So, but I can certainly check.
Okay. And Jeff said that we'd know by May, and then funds would be released in July, and I would assume we would, want to move forward.
Right, and we know that we're going to have to go through and open the budget throughout this next year anyway, so if it's not in there and we do get awarded, then we can certainly do that at that time as well.
Well, I was just more concerned where our funds were going to come from.
And those are earmarked specifically in the reserves.
I have, go ahead.
If I could also just mention, the design for this is anticipated, you're going to have some costs between July and October 1st of next year, but the bulk of the costs are actually won't be incorporated, won't be, I guess, required until probably after your fiscal year of next year. So it could actually be budgeted between 2 fiscal years.
If we do not get this grant funded, do we lose the LTAC money? Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay, any further council comments or discussions? I'll open it again to the public one last time. If the public would like to ask any questions or make any statements, feel free, Tom.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I didn't sign that, so if I do need to, I'd be glad to before I leave. But one thing I didn't hear covered, and I hear a lot of comment up and down the street, is the flow of traffic. And I didn't hear whether that's still a two-way, one-way, no way. And could you cover that for us?
That would still be a two-way street. I think the intent of the bulb outs is to naturally slow the traffic down a little bit. We have 25 mile per hour speed limit down Main Street now. Jeff, I believe from a design perspective, I think you and Ivan can both elaborate on the bulb outs and how it sort of naturally slows the traffic, but it will remain two-way traffic on Main.
And still angle parking, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we would still keep our diagonal parking. The angles may change a little bit, things like that. But go ahead, Jeff.
Just one of the key things for that, and I'll let Ivan talk about this if I don't answer it correctly, but one of the key things of doing the bulb outs is one, safety regulated. The other one is handicap accessibility. Because the cars pull in there at an angle, someone with the mobility issue, if you're in a wheelchair, you're basically happening right now. You have to go out into the intersection blindly without anybody being able to see you versus you being able to see them as well. And that creates basically a very dangerous situation for everyone involved. It's the same situation with the vehicle. You have to basically take your chances, kind of stick your nose out there, and hopefully you don't get hit. The purpose of this bulb out is the bulb out will stick out further into the intersection. That'll allow pedestrians and vehicles to move out closer into the intersection, so it won't be as blocked as much. That way you can won't have impeded vision. You can see right, you can see left, you can see basically crosswalks, and you know who's in the crosswalk. I believe we do anticipate having those little flags, or maybe not, I don't know if we're that far yet, but I know there was some discussion about having those little posts that have flags so you can pick one up before you cross the street. But anyways, did I miss anything, Evan?
That was actually pretty good. Did that answer the question, or is there still a thought on what is that, or how does that work?
I guess there's still a question, and there again, I don't understand because I haven't seen the plan either, but if your sidewalks are going to be wider than what they are now, I understand for accessibility, two wheelchairs pass or some sort of thing. Is that going to bring the traffic or the parking out further? And we don't have really a lot of room in there now. When we diagonally park, and then people from
We are going to try to not expand the sidewalks in front of the buildings any wider than they are now. If I remember right, they're about 9 feet wide right now, somewhere around there. We're trying to keep them in that same area. We will be fixing them as far as any kind of accessibility issues with grades. Americans with Disabilities Act is real strict on what kind of grades you have in the cross slopes on your sidewalks. And the purpose of the bulb outs is that the whole purpose of the bulb out is to try to improve safety. They find that there's a lot of accidents, especially where you have diagonal parking right next to corners. It makes it much more difficult for cars that are already on the road to see what's going on, and also for the people to back out to be able to make sure they're backing out into a clear area. We have some ideas on things that we want to do in order to improve that, but the bulb outs is there for a safety-related issue. It does increase the visibility for the pedestrians, both to see the oncoming cars and also to be seen by the cars. We've all probably driven down Main Street here and had somebody walk out from between the cars that we couldn't see coming, either because they were behind a Suburban or a nice big tall pickup truck like we'd all like to drive or whatever, but they just kind of pop out in here. Well, the bulb outs help to break that up or to slow that down or make it less of a factor, because you don't have anybody parked right at that corner then.
Since this project has been discussed, and it's been kind of going on for a while, the only solutions for these corners that I've heard about have been these bulb outs. Without going into a lot of detail, are there other solutions? Are there other possibilities for corners that will provide a safety solution, but maybe not take up as much room? I don't know.
There are some other solutions. They don't fit the circumstances quite as well as bulb outs do. Bulb outs really seem to fit the circumstances that we have here. Part of those circumstances are that we have a really nice wide road. Well, that nice wide road is not really all that nice if you are using a walker or something else, or if you're mobility impaired. Then it's a real long ways for you to get across, during which time you're in danger. So the bulb outs, the other part of what they do is they reduce the distance between where you enter the street and where you have a chance to get off the street and back into safety. They make that distance shorter and easier to traverse. And so that's also part of why the bulb outs have been presented. But there are other solutions that can be looked at and considered and done.
Any other public comments? Tracy?
In each one of these locations, how many parking spaces are you anticipating losing?
I would have to go back and look at our sketches. Some of the locations vary and change and differ, but off the top of my head, I'd say we're probably looking at 2 to 3 parking spaces each location. I stood up earlier because I was going to mention that in the engineering contract, we are planning on having contacts with the business owners along the area there. We also plan during design to have at least 2 meetings with the business owners to get your input and your feedback, and also give you a chance to look and say, this is my business right here. What are we doing right in front of mine? What's happening to my parking? And also, what can I expect during construction? How long do we think it's going to be with the backhoe parked in front of my door? And so we have a chance to at least talk about that twice before we ever put this out to bid.
The bulb outs are just on the corners, correct?
The bulb outs would just be on the corners, that is correct.
If you take out the utility poles, what are you going to do for streetlights?
There will still be street lights up there. There just won't be all the overhead wires that hang down from them and that go across the road.
You said something about poles that are set in the sidewalk.
The existing poles are starting to show their age, and so they will be replaced, and the overhead wires, which tend to be a little bit more of a safety factor as they're aging, or if they get caught by an oversized vehicle that goes underneath them, or whatever happens to down them. The wires will be undergrounded, but there will still be street lights. In fact, we plan on improving the street lights and making it to where it's a more even lighting across the whole area.
So they're not going to be on the sidewalk?
The street lights will still be at the sidewalk. They'll be near the back curb.
Right now, those power poles sit right in the middle of it. They will position these light posts to be closer to the curb, so you're not walking directly into it. When you're walking down the sidewalk, you won't run right into it.
Yeah, far back to the bumper, don't hit when you pull into it, don't they?
Well, you can also arrange them, when you pull in on diagonal, you'll notice one corner, the bumper hangs over, the other corner it doesn't. We'll be trying to line them up so that they're at the corners where the bumper does not hang over.
I'm not sure, I didn't, can you point those out on there? I know those aren't maybe going to be the actual design, but can you point the two light poles that are shown in there? The decorative light poles that are shown?
There's a decorative light pole right here and another one right there that are shown, and that's one of the concepts and the ideas that we have out there, but we will be looking into, putting a nice feel to the street lights, and it will still be somewhat budget driven because these nice looking decorative poles typically cost more than the standard ones that you see out there. It just looks silver and very bland, but that's a budget item.
Maybe I missed this. How many corners is this going to be level on? How many corners are you going to put this?
Would this be Madison, Monroe, and also on the corner of Center and Main?
It will not be the corner of Center and Main. The limits stop just short of that corner. At some point there will need to be another project. We've been looking at it as far as where do we program it into the overall list of projects the city has, but there will need to be a project specifically at the intersection of Main and Center Street just because of the anticipated cost of redoing that.
So Mr. Ledbetter's question has been Monroe and Main, so you'd have 4 corners. So you'd have eight corners.
There'd be a total of 8 corners. It'd be Monroe and Madison that would receive this kind of a treatment that we have within the boundaries of this project. The additional idea with that is those that, based on how well all of this works and how well everybody likes it, then the city would be likely to just expand and continue to do this kind of thing at their other areas whenever they have projects that need to rebuild things. They would take as many of the elements that work in this as they can towards other projects in the future.
So in the future, on South Main there, with the school and such, they're going to need it. They need it now, but they need a turning lane in the center there, because that way there wouldn't be the blockage that there is the traffic going through there.
Yeah.
If our truck had to get through there, it'd be impossible at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, and we'll need to look at that and study the needs more thoroughly of what's really needed there at the intersection of Center and Main and also for South Main, and how we're going to handle all that and plan for the future and to accommodate that, including for the school traffic.
Does this plan also include, I know we're talking about the bulb outs on each corner, will the current sidewalks and curb and gutter also be replaced? Is that included in this project?
That is included in this project, yes.
There's also stormwater retention. Is that also going to be added to this, some sort of stormwater system?
There will be provisions included within this to continue to allow stormwater runoff to head north up to the tracks, but we are not going to be putting in any kind of a retention pond or anything as part of this project. There's just not room for that.
Oh, I thought I read in the documents that you were looking at putting maybe the infrastructure to connect to a future.
Yeah, we're planning on just providing for and maintaining proper drainage of what's there right now.
So slow, basically. Okay.
So you would have something that looked like something similar to a valley gutter across your bulb out?
Correct.
Okay.
It would not be a real deep valley gutter, in part because that's one of the things I try to evangelize about and say that I don't like the valley gutters that act as speed deterrents. They don't last as very long because trucks and cars beat them up as the valley gutter beats up the trucks and cars, but there would be concrete valley gutters.
Any further questions?
I would just like to know, it looks nice and everything, but who pays for all this grant? Who pays for it?
Well, $500,000, that's why we're applying for the grant. $500,000
Yeah, but who
will come.
pays for the grant?
The funding itself comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it's provided to the state each year to fund this program.
So you're saying we don't have to pay it back?
That is correct. It's not a loan, it's a grant.
Okay.
Good questions. Any further questions?
I just wondered, where do you start after the tracks, or do you go beyond the tracks to the north?
Just about 25 feet south of the tracks, of the south spur line is where we'll start.
We need to go further north.
We do, and if you ever have a chance to look at our documents, we actually have in our documents to say that there are 3 phases to this project. This particular grant is only going after phase 1. Phase 2 is that section of, north, or taking in the railroad tracks and heading north up towards Highway 30. And then phase 3 is the intersection of Center Street and Main Street.
Would that phase 2 or phase 3, would that include maybe sidewalks and stuff over to the new city hall along the highway there?
It could possibly include sidewalks a portion of the distance. We would probably have to split it up and make it a separate project in order to continue along the state highway, because that's state controlled right of way, and so that just has different rules that go along with it that aren't necessarily compatible with this urban redevelopment at this point.
Well, at this time, I will close the public hearing. Thank you very much. All the action on yes,
Another
yes,
question.
please.
On this, since we're making the sidewalk ADA compliant, and that was a lot of the grant was requiring that, are the businesses along there going to have to change their entrances or be obligated with this grant? Because I know not all of them are necessarily ADA compliant, and I would hate to see, an additional expense for our business owners along there.
They won't be. With Title, under Section 2 of the Handicap Accessibility Act, businesses are required by law to accommodate the disabled community. So that should be one of their priorities anyways.
Right.
By doing these improvements in front, no, that's not going to trigger them to have to do that. But as a business owner, that would be one thing that they would probably want to begin looking at. Compliance for that, it was supposed to be done back in 1994, so I know the requirements continue to evolve and change, but this will not require the businesses to do that, but they kind of do that at their own risk.
Well, and I think most of them, have it so the wheelchairs can get in, but I'm just concerned that doors and things need to be replaced to make the extra large.
It won't trigger that.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item is item D under old business. We do have a design build contract for Starr Corporation on the City Hall remodel. Paul.
We have invited Michael Arrington here this evening in case there's any questions that you have come up with on the actual contract itself with the addition of the 2 exhibits, A and C. So I would just open it up for any questions to be posed to Mr. Arrington.
I've read through both the documents and have no questions with council.
I guess it was my understanding that this document had been signed back in November 2009 when Starr was chosen as the design build contractor. And as mentioned, work's already begun. I'm just wondering kind of where we're at on that and why we're looking at this now when the work's already begun, and we remember the impression in Mr. Levy.
Sure. We're at risk, essentially. We are. We, back in November 2009, a request for qualifications was put out to find a design build team, and we were selected. And at the time, we talked about a fee structure, if we would charge you by the hour every time we came, and looked at various projects and really how we were going to approach that. And we offered at the time, the text or the discussion would have done something like this, that I didn't want Polly or anyone in the city to feel like, well, when we call someone at Starr, is it like talking to our attorney? And is the clock always turning? We wanted it to be a very open
relationship and where you felt like you could call upon us for our expertise. And so we offered that. Really, we haven't been keeping track of how many hours we come down and talk to you, or when we meet with you. We said that if and when we get to a real project that we execute and move forward on, at that point, we'd be able to formalize a contract and then be able to earn a fee based on the work that we actually do. So at the time, we were picked and selected based on qualifications that we set forth, but we haven't sent a bill to the city for anything that we've done to this point. Essentially, we've been earning a job, I'd call it. So once the council approved the budget, there've been many budgets set forth, and depending on the different circumstances that were, I don't know right off the top of my head, there are probably 4 or 5 different scenarios, maybe more, that we put budgets together for, but really wasn't appropriate at the time to drop a contract because we didn't know what we would actually be building. And so now, when the council approved to move forward with the project, we began putting this draft contract together to submit to the council of the city for approval, and made the suggestion that we move forward with what work we could right away to try to minimize the cost, really, of that cold weather would bring. There's a new paint job for the building, and there's some brickwork for the building that we're going to be cutting it real close with cold weather anyway, and we offered that we would get moving on that, really as a service to the city. That's how we set it out there anyway. And so we've been moving on that as best we can as the design documents progress, and still haven't sent a bill for what we've done out there. So it puts us in a bit of a difficult position if you guys change your mind and head a different direction. But to borrow some language that Ivan used earlier, we've been working on good faith that we would be able to arrive at the concept and the building and the budget were approved and move forward knowing that we're all reasonable and that we're going to be able to arrive at the terms of the contract. And so that's a brief thumbnail.
And I appreciate you answering to that. I want to stay on task as far as this issue and business before the council right now. I do have a statement that I'm going to make regarding some of the comments earlier, and I'll do that under mayor comments under item 9. And I'll kind of cover the chronological order of progression of what we've done since 2009.
Fair enough. I'll wait and speak.
And what the council has done.
Yes.
So at this point, I hope that's answered your question. Do you have any follow-up questions?
As far as the documents that we received, on the proposed budget, your actual fees from Starr that you have at the top of that, and I don't have that available in front of me, but under general conditions,
yes,
those fees won't change. I mean, those are your set fees. Those aren't going to fluctuate with the project like the A&E consultant fees.
No, it actually could fluctuate. It could fluctuate down, and it has fluctuated down in the different budgets that we have presented, and as we've gone to do that, I mean, no, it's not fixed. It could fluctuate, and there's some pretty specific verbiage that sets it up to where it could fluctuate down.
Now, if it can fluctuate down, can it fluctuate up to, or this 125,332 that will not exceed that?
I'm not familiar with that particular number. Where's that coming from?
That's
I've got it here. I just need to find
up at the very top, Division 1 general conditions, and then across from that line, it's the total. For
everything. That total of the 125,332. Yeah. Yeah, it's well.
If it can go down, can it go up to? Or?
I suppose that it could. If we elected to do more material testing than what we budgeted for, it could go up. Speaking specifically about that design builder fee, if we elected to increase the scope of the project for whatever reason, it could go up.
But that would require
council change orders, right?
I am.
Okay.
For instance, I mean, this is an absurd, but I'll use it as an example. Let's say that we decided to add a second story. We're not going to, but I use it as an absurd example, just to illustrate. Then we would want more fee as we figured out how to add that second story. But really, it'd be for a change in the scope of work.
So the plan as it is now, as it was presented to the council, everything proceeds without any changes, that dollar amount is a not to exceed amount, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so along her same line of questioning, I've had a few questions brought before me, mostly having to do with bidding it out, what happens next.
Sure.
And so I know your company is more than qualified to do certain portions of the project yourself. What portions of the project are you going to have bid out? And if they are bid out and the numbers come in possibly lower, are those bids presented to city staff or the council, just to review, or how does that process move forward?
How does that work, Mayor?
Yes, please.
Okay. Right now, based on we just received the preliminary drawings and the preliminary performance specification for the electrical and mechanical systems. Based on that, I believe it's 12 or in that neighborhood, number of bid packages that I have a very specific scope set up for bidders to respond to. So at this point, assuming that the drawings are acceptable, we would move forward with the bidding on that, and we would invite contractors from the area that are properly licensed to bid on the work as set forth in those specific packages. An example of packages would be drywall, or the HVAC system, or the electrical, or the windows, or the doors and windows. I mean, there's any number. There's about 12 of them that we've got put together that we can bid out to any properly licensed company. There'll be a pre-bid meeting to answer any questions, as it is a remodel, or a tenant improvement. There's some existing conditions. We're going to have a pre-bid meeting where prospective bidders can come to the building and examine it, in preparation for putting together a responsible bid, and then we'll take the bids, and then we'll when we present those to you, we'll do it open, just like we've done with everything else. We'll bring, let's say as an example for drywall, we received 3 bids, and we'll do our homework ahead of time. We'll make sure that all 3 of those are properly licensed and are set up to actually tender a valid offer. And then we will, unless there's some extenuating circumstances, we would use the lowest responsive bid there and include it in the budget and come back to you with the final version of this based on the actual bids, with our suggestion of who to use, as well as anyone else who submitted a bid for that package. And then you'd be able to see where that number is coming from, and then at that time we'll know exactly what each package is worth and what it's going to cost.
So hypothetically, and you guys have been around the block, so I'm sure this wouldn't ever happen, but hypothetically, if some of the numbers all came in higher than what was quoted to us, we're only obligated to pay what is on this bid, is that right?
Well, no. When I was talking about a guaranteed max earlier, we were talking about a very specific number, not the whole project. We have had contracts like that where we'll offer up a guaranteed price right now, but if there's during that, if bids come in under, we've taken all the risk. That's ours. We're going to take that. Where we've offered a guaranteed, not to exceed bottom line price. Let's say that it came in over budget, just for the sake of discussion. What we would do then, I've already got a handful of places in mind where, in the event that happens, we can go back and look at it. But what I've done in the past when that happened was you go back and you meet with the lowest bidder in a particular category that has some chance to move, and maybe the buzzword in the industry is value engineering, a way to make it more affordable, or to make it to where it can get to our budget, and work with them and get it down to where we can afford it. I mean, we're not infallible. It happens sometimes.
Well, I'm saying,
And
as
so-
far as what you would ask the city for, would you ask the city for more funds in the event that all the bids came in higher? Or would you be working with your subcontractors to get it where you need it to be?
We'd be working with, we would come back to the city and we would present you with options. We would, so yes to all.
Okay.
We would, the first plan of attack would be to work with the design team and with the contractors to get it to budget. And then present the city with all of those options. Whatever happens, you'll be well informed of what's going on and what's happening.
Now, the way this is structured, then, it sounds like the number possibly is still a moving target. I guess I'm wanting to go back to then, why are we starting on a project before we have all the final numbers in? You know, it doesn't make much sense to me. And so I guess I would like to find that out. Why was it so necessary to move forward if we didn't have a set in stone dollar amount?
Well, let me go through the chronological order of what's happened or transpired since 2009. Other than myself and Lee McKinley, we were the only city council people that were here in 09, I believe. In 09, the existing council at that time had put out a request for qualifications for a design-build contractor. We had interviewed and gone through several applications. Starr Corporation was selected by the city council at that time. Mr. Arrington's done a great job for us over the last couple of years. He is out on his own. He has knocked on doors to find locations and give the council options all over town. We were sending you on quite a few missions, and so I believe it was the latter part of 2010. I think most of the council sitting here tonight, it was the decision of this council to move forward with allowing for a grant application for Family Health Services to take the existing City Hall location, including Councilwoman Sheldon, and I believe it was I believe that vote was unanimous. And so this City Council obligated the existing City Hall location to Family Health Services into a community block grant application process. At the same time, this City Council agreed that that location would be chosen and selected as our new City Hall. That includes Councilwoman Sheldon, Councilman Richmond, Councilwoman McKinley, and Councilman Hoobler. There was no dissension in that decision by this council. During those negotiations, the United Methodist Church building and those directors were under duress. This council, and I believe everyone sitting here this evening, including Councilwoman Sheldon, I believe made the motion and the decision to offer the United Methodist Church $800,000 to purchase that church building. That didn't happen. As recent as one meeting ago, the City Council approved to continue to move forward with the Idaho Community Block Grant application for Family Health Services, including a nod from every council person sitting here this evening, which meant, again, that they supported allowing Family Health Services to move into the existing City Hall location. So chronologically, I'm trying to put a picture together for everybody sitting here this evening that this wasn't done in a vacuum. There's been a lot of decisions over the last couple of years, and like Mr. Kuntz I was on the city council for many years, served alongside Mr. Coons, who I have a lot of respect for. And I also take some custodial, I appreciate the comment, because we worked very hard since '95 to put money aside. And when the BLM property was sold out here several years ago, that money was set aside for a city hall location. The building in '98, Tom, you were on the council, I believe, when we struck, I think you were, when we struck the agreement with the fire district that if they were, the city had actually donated that property to the fire district to build their fire station on. And in 2009, with some foresight and good planning and a good solid agreement, it was agreed upon that if the fire district ever moved from that location, no longer needed it, that the city would have first right of refusal. And again, this council decided to act on that offer and purchase that property, which again this council just did recently, and purchased the building. I guess some of the comments I'm hearing seem like some of it comes backdoor through members of this council, through members of the public, and I don't like it when people talk out of both sides of their mouth. The fact is that other than maybe voting a couple of times to split a vote, this council has acted together on all these decisions over the last several years. I'm just making a statement. I'm not asking for a conversation here. But I hope that sheds a little light on where we've been, how far we've come, and where we're at today. That building was condemned over a year ago. We have city staff sitting in temporary quarters, displacing our library. We've got a police department in a trailer. Boxes stacked so you can't stack them any further. I understand it's an election year, but taking cheap shots and taking opportunities like tonight, after all the hard work that myself and this council's put in, it does hurt. We've worked very hard for this community, and I understand there's ambitions, and people have their entitlements to ambitions to run for office. But I've grown up here my whole life. I've done everything as honorably as I can do. I've served my country in the military. I came home and I've raised a family. And it just really hurts to know that any time an election year comes along, the rumors start flying and the jabs start going, and it just really is disheartening. This gentleman here has done everything that he can to help the city. Mr. Richmond to my right has served on the school board, and I think he has some comments he could share about the contract before us this evening that the council needs to act on. And at this time, I'll shut my mouth.
Mr. Overker, I appreciate your comments, and your timeline, appears accurate, and I agree with you on pretty much everything you said.
I'm just wanting to make a statement. At this time, we do have a
Well, I would like to make a statement also, to talk about that. I did everything you said. I did vote. I am still in favor of the City Hall location where it's going. I, however, wanted things done a certain way. I wanted to have open houses. I wanted to look at budget numbers for a library model. I wanted to look at all of these things because we only have a limited amount of money, and I wanted to see what was possible and what the true timeline would be for this plan. So I want to start off by saying that. Then, now I want to backtrack and come back to my question, which, I appreciate your comments. However, it didn't answer my question. And again, all I'm complaining about here is how things are being handled. I agree. I think it needs to, go where it is. I think it's a great deal. We're able to combine a lot of things under one roof. I just think it's not been handled properly. I think it's been handled hastily. And so my main question is if this, and see, I was under the assumption that number, I even thought I asked, was that number a not to exceed number? And I was told yes. I did vote against this, mostly because I didn't like it being sprung on me. I didn't feel like I was prepared. However that happened, that's why I voted against it. I felt like I had made requests for certain things to be done before we got to that point. They weren't followed through. So now we're at this point. It's approved. Half the council approved it, and along with the mayor, approved where we're at now. My frustration is if that number is still not a set in stone number, the possibility exists for it to go over budget even more. And again, we have a limited amount of money to work with. So I'm rounding back now. I'm not understanding why it was so necessary to get started on this project before we had a set in stone number. And so maybe I'll be more detailed. Whose idea was it to get started right off the bat? And why did it get started without a set in stone number?
I'll try to address that. But I know we had a meeting with Mr. Arrington and our city administrator and staff. One of the two things we had in place, we had our design build contractor in place, had been selected and approved by the city council. We had a budget approved by the city council. The agreement, as he said, I guess the risk is all his. But their concern, which they conveyed to myself and to staff, was we're running out of warm days. And if we're going to get certain things done and get the building at least shelled up so that they could do the most important part of the work is going to be inside that building and hopefully out of cold weather. It was doing nothing more than taking the doors down, walling them up, putting in some windows, getting the siding up, taking care of the exterior of the building. Okay? Basically, is that pretty much it, Mike?
That's accurate, and there may be a question of what are we paying for this work that's being done out there. I think that's probably going to be the best deal you get on any work that happens out there. Every bit of it is just at cost. It's not. I don't know what else to say than that.
Well, and I guess my frustration is still not being understood. If that number isn't a set in stone number, what we've basically done is allowed this contractor to move forward, bid it all out, and then come back to us potentially, I'm just speaking hypothetically, or I'm sure it won't happen, but potentially come back to us and say, you know, the numbers came in higher, whoops, you know, we need to make a change. That frustrates me, you know, and so I guess I'm not understanding why it was allowed to move forward without even a signed contract in place, let alone firm bids.
Let me just talk about our experience with the school. The school had a $10 million bond. I think it was $10 million, wasn't it?
Yes.
$10 million bond, and we decided to go with the design build concept because we had other problems with contractors, and we had problems with the roof of the school, and that was a long battle, and it wasn't Starr's problem, but we could design build so that we could, if we had problems, the design builder takes care of all those problems. They take care of all the subcontractors. They take care of all the construction problems, basically. And so we hired Starr Corporation, and they came in under budget. They were on time. They came in, I think it was $40,000 under budget, and we were able to build the greenhouse by the high school. Wasn't that right?
Yeah, we were able to do that, and a handful of other, put a roof on this building. There's a handful of other things we were able to do.
You know, I've talked with Mike Mason, the finance director at CSI. You've done several contracts for them. That is the same experience they have had at CSI on multiple contracts with Starr Corporation. I understand and respect Councilman Hoobler's concern, but at the same time, I don't think we've moved only as far as we had to, just to get the building shored up. I think so we could get a few things done to get out of the weather, potential weather. And I think Mike and Starr Corporation have acted in good faith in doing so.
I agree, and I second everything you guys are saying. I mean, I know Starr personally. I've worked with them a little bit. Fantastic company, and I think the best for this job. My question's still not being answered, so I will move on. I guess my next question would be, because they've already started, concrete has been poured, other work has been done, have we received a copy of their surety bond and liability insurance? And if so, when did we get it?
You can't provide one until there's a contract.
So we're having to work on a project without bonds in place in case of issues. So
Most of the bonds are for performance, and that's at the completion of the project, if I'm not mistaken. Insurance is in place, but I'm sure Starr Corporation has a very, very good commercial insurance policy, and that's just a matter of providing the city with a certificate of insurance.
But typically, these things are provided after the contract is signed, and we feel like, and I think the documents even say that they will be, when are they supposed to be provided? After the contract is signed, or at the same time?
Right after it's
Right after it's signed. So that's a frustration I have there. Let's see. And so basically, when we start to receive bids from these other contractors, you said that you'll advise the city on which contractors to possibly go with, or will that go before the council?
That's not really my decision.
Either way,
I'm asking typically how this is going to be done. I'm not really sure. I'm just wanting to know from my own knowledge.
You want me to?
Please.
Typically, the board's not, or the council's not bothered with decisions like that. It's they've got the city staff to look at those kind of things. And so typically when we work with entities that have boards and councils, they elect not to have us come back and present those kind of details to the council or board.
And that makes sense, and I have no problem with that. I was just wanting to know from my own knowledge. And as far as change orders go, before they're approved, and this might be a city staff question, mayor question, I'm not sure, are change orders something that's presented before the council for approval?
I think if there's going to be additional funding, they should be.
That's what I've seen as well, that so long as the council or board or however an entity is structured stays within the budget that they've been given, then they have authority to use those funds. And if they ever got into a situation where they felt like it may be beneficial to add scope to the project and they were looking for additional funds, of course they would return to that governing board or council of their entity to review that. It really depends on what the entity is.
And maybe this isn't pertinent to the contract, but since you're here, I was kind of curious, now that we've started, what do you kind of project a timeline to be for completion?
The midwinter of this year, before the spring.
Before the spring.
Yeah.
And if there is a need for cold weather, heating, coverings, anything like that, is that something that we're going to be given a change order for? How does that work?
That's the whole reason that we're moving like we are, to avoid that.
Right, but if it's not avoided, what happens then?
you just wait until spring to do
Yeah.
this kind of project?
Then we'd have to come back and work with the city staff. I can't answer every if and but do you have a specific concern?
Well, I'm just wondering,
Sidewalk,
as far as the contract goes, the cost has been brought up quite a bit. I know what our budget is. I know what's been set aside for these things, and so that's my main concern is, can we keep it within budget? So that's why I'm asking monetary questions, is I want to know what to expect. My family's construction company does a lot of concrete, steel, that type of thing. They do a lot of coverings, tenting, heating during the winter, and that can be kind of costly. So I'm just kind of wanting to know from your perspective on where we're at now, if we do run into cold weather, is it something that we should be worried about? Because you'll probably get it done before that.
Right now, I would not worry about cold weather. That's going to be done, and it won't affect the project.
Okay, that's the extent of my questions.
Mayor, may I ask a question, please? At this point, Mr. Ledbetter, I'm sorry. Just one moment, and I'll open that up. Any further council discussion?
I was just wondering how, in what order, or how soon will each one of these things be put out?
They'll all be put out at the same duration. They'll be put out the end of this week. And right now, we're looking at a bid date of November 15th. Everybody's bid would be due at the same time, at the same, same place, and then we'll be able to present them to you after that.
So by the end of November, we should have a concrete figure as far as, without any change orders or anything like that, where we are at on the project. Is that
Oh, well before the end, yeah.
Okay, but at our next council meeting, we would have that. I mean, that's the end of November, but right before Thanksgiving, so
Then yes.
we'll open the bids. Okay.
Yeah, your next, what's the date of it?
I think it's the 22nd.
Oh, then yes. Yeah.
And then if at that time, the bids, I mean, I'm hoping they'll come in below. I think there's a lot of hungry subcontractors out there looking for work and things, but if they come in above, then we have the option, I guess, of either funding or, hopefully not, but putting a stop to the project. I mean,
There's all manner of choices.
okay. I guess I just want to make sure
The
our
contract
options
addresses
are all
every
open.
different one there is, but do you want me to speak to that, Mayor? I guess I can tell you that if that's the problem, we're not going to show up that night with, well, looks like you guys are over budget. You could give me some money, we'll move forward. We'll come here with all manner of solutions and suggestions of how to get the project back on track. And that's part of what we do and part of what we're prepared to do for the city of Kimberly. And so there is a bit of market conditions, as you've alluded to, drive this. Commodity prices, there's all manner of things that affect this. The different pricing and what a particular contractor is willing to do particular parts of this work for. And so we can't know every single piece of how this will come out, but I'm very confident that we're going to be able to come back and present good news to you. If we don't, then we will present a number of solutions to the problem.
I just want to say I appreciate all that you have done. I've been at every meeting since mid-2009, and I realize that the work that you put in without any compensation and things. I think probably what could have been handled better in the situation is back on, I believe, September 13th, we were surprised with the change to the agenda and caught off guard, but if it would have been explained that the weather conditions are changing, I think, a lot of this could have been eliminated rather than just pushing forward, saying this has to be done tonight.
And for that, I would apologize. Again, I think when the city council, from where I sit, when the city council approves and selects the design build contractor, and then the city council approves the budget, and we're, and we decide to move forward just to get a few things done. I understand the contract's important, and I'll take full responsibility for moving forward where it's caused the heartache it has. I believe that we've all acted in good faith. There's nothing underhanded. We're just trying to get these folks to a place where they could get their crews inside for the winter. And so again, if I can ask for us to focus on the contract and any further discussion by the council on this contract, and action will need to be taken.
You were going to open it up to public.
I'm not going to open up to everybody here. I've heard from people. Mr. Ledbetter, did you have a comment?
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Was this project out on bid? Would you let it out on bid, or were you required to? The project, the cost?
This particular one, it's would be for professional services. So yes, it's based on a qualification process. That was what was advertised in the newspaper, and all those different legal requirements happened back in, I don't know the exact date, but it was back in 2009. And so all the advertising and all that happened in 2009, and we've been working with and then went through that selection process as prescribed by the Idaho Code, and then we've been working with the city ever since.
Does that answer your question? Thank you. What's that?
Can I make one comment?
Yes, please.
Okay. With the timeline that Mr. Arrington does expect, have this ready to move into spring of 2012, all the better for the library to be able to start the remodel there. And then we can move forward with design and such of the library. And so I just think that it's a good time to move forward. And that, that's another reason.
Any more discussion on the contract with Starr Corporation? I've already heard from you, Tracy. Any action by the council on the contract?
I move we approve the design build contract for Starr Corporation in the City Hall remodel.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve the design build contract with Starr Corporation by Councilman Richmond, second by Councilman McKinley. Further discussion by the council.
Yeah, I would like to just say that my vote tonight doesn't reflect any dissatisfaction with Starr. I think Mike Arrington has done a phenomenal job, and I believe his company is the best equipped to handle this project. My vote tonight is reflecting my dissatisfaction with how this project has moved forward and with how some of my concerns were bypassed. So I just want that to be clear.
Question, please.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Hoobler,
No.
McKinley,
Yes.
Richmond,
Yes.
Motion carries. We are tabling item E. We'll move on to new business. November 8th meeting for council table. Jenny?
1 second, please. The question was, since we are not going to be meeting on the 8th because of Election Day, and you had decided not to meet that night, if it would be with your approval to go ahead and pay the bills that need to be paid rather than waiting clear to the 22nd. We usually have the Idaho Power and the Visa, some of those things that if we don't pay them on time, we will incur penalties.
Could we, would it be feasible to have those emailed to us, to just have us look over them?
I think that's
And then, if we have any objections, we could let you know. Or if we have any questions or objections.
We could just go ahead and do like a regular payable and email it out so that you could go over it.
We have a meeting on the 5th, or?
No.
Paul?
Just as a reminder to the council, you do have a resolution that's already in place at the beginning of the year that the regular bills can be paid, so Idaho Power, those sorts of things. But I'm not certain that the Visa bill would be on there, which that's one of the ones that would charge interest if that one's not paid. So we just wanted to make sure. And certainly the list that you would get right now, we could sure send out so that if there's any questions that you could certainly get back and let them know.
And are there any problems legality-wise with doing that via email and giving our okay that way?
There shouldn't be, because we do it that way now. I mean, we get to look at it that way.
It wouldn't be an actual approval. Those would still need to be approved on the 22nd, but if there was any question on...
And then if there is, I mean, I haven't had an issue with anything, but if there were an issue with something, that could be taken off.
Well, and the ones that Jean can hold over, she'll certainly hold over until that last meeting. You just want to make sure that there wasn't anything in between those meetings that needed to be handled.
next item on the agenda under new business is the agreement for legal services. In 2008, Mr. Halfield provided the city with a contract, and that was approved by the council at that time. In 2009, I understand he presented one, and maybe it fell in my trash basket. I don't know, but it never got to the council to actually follow up for renewal of his contract in 2009 or 2010. So recently we did ask Mr. Halfield to present us with an updated contract. I hope you've had time to review it. We've already spoke with him about the term of the contract, which I think the council, I talked to Councilman Hoobler about this, we feel like we need to make sure that the term renews probably in February of each year, so any new mayor or council would have opportunity to review the council services and make changes if necessary. So other than that, are there any other items in here for discussion or concern you'd like to see with this contract? I think it would go from October, once approved by the council, only to February 1st, Polly?
Well, I was just thinking that if a new council is in place, by the time you would take over in January and then get your first meeting underway, so maybe the second meeting, so maybe towards the end of February, would give the mayor time to do their appointments.
And then it would be a year contract, I think.
Yes, correct. Or maybe like the 1st of March or something, to be that month of February, because you're never going to know where that date falls each year in February for your meeting.
I had a question related to compensation on the contract. I was just kind of curious, Polly, do you know, does Mr. Holt turn in hours that he works per month? Do we kind of get an idea of how much time he devotes to the city for city business?
No, there's not an invoice or anything recorded. I had this question presented earlier today, and Bill works a lot on a weekly basis for the city. He's in court usually all afternoon Monday, and is it Monday and Tuesdays?
Monday and, well, Monday's trials, Tuesday's pre-trials.
So whatever we have going on with the police force, if there's actually hearings and whatnot, he's in court with that. Jenny Nickerson has a standing appointment with him
Twice a month.
So every other Tuesday or
Wednesday.
I make appointments with him, and over there we're on the phone with each other probably at least 2 times a day. I know Rob talks to him, Jeff. So as far as the number of hours that he works in a month, I really don't know how many that is. I'm sure that we could certainly ask him for something. But
I was just kind of curious. I have no doubt he works a lot of hours, and I was just trying to quantify that to people that question that amount, because I believe he puts in a lot of hours. I was just kind of curious, just for my own knowledge, what that
And he and I correspond a lot on the weekends, because that's when we actually have time that we can focus on things. And so a lot of our correspondence is done on Saturday and Sundays.
I'll second that. Mr. Hollifield and I do have and Polly, we do have a running email correspondence over the weekend for things that just can't wait till Monday morning.
I think the one thing that I noticed here that he doesn't do, business expenses, so the contractor shall be responsible for business expenses, including office rent, telephone, but the things that he could actually charge us for, he doesn't. Maybe they changed it. Well, it did say the city shall reimburse the contractor for long-distance calls, online research, time, fax charges, photocopies, mailing costs, and out-of-town travel, none of which he passes on to the city. But he does have it in the contract.
Well, like I say, I do appreciate the contract being adjusted, and I would like to go ahead and make a motion with that change of end of February as being the contract term.
And that would be item 7 on the first page, changing October, in this case, 25th.
No, on the first of all.
Do you want to make that And was that a motion? Yes. Is there a second?
Yes, second.
I have a motion by Councilman Hoobler to approve the legal contract with Mr. Hallfield, Hallfield Law Office, for a term from October 25th, I guess being today, through February 15th, 2012. And second by Councilman Sheldon. Question, please.
Richmond,
Yes.
McKinley,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
Hoobler,
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item, we do have a resolution, a personnel manual update having to do with the health insurance of our employees that may be eligible for Medicare. And that is in the form of a resolution now that would be attached to the personnel manual. We did make some language changes to that today. I think we had Medicare Advantage plans, and Jen has changed that. And I didn't print it off, you got it right there, to be enrolled in Medicare supplemental plans rather than Medicare Advantage plans. Medicare Advantage plan is a actual animal in and of itself, so we want to leave that open to Medicare with supplemental plans, which means they can choose whatever Medicare supplement plan or Medicare Advantage plan they want.
Great idea, great addition to personnel, right? Which manual?
I do have a question, Jen. I asked you, did you have an opportunity to check with the Idaho Department of Insurance as far as employer-paid benefits to an individual plan?
correct. And that was one of the issues I had on the last payroll. The Mutual of Omaha would not allow us to pay directly to them. When Patty and Helen had sat down, they had checked a box incorrectly and thought that we could. So that's why this is going. It would also be the reimbursement rather than a direct pay to the insurance. And we're good with that.
So we'll need action to approve that resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution. Be part of the personal manual update.
We got a motion and a second quickly. So a motion by Councilwoman McKinley and a second by Councilwoman Shelton to approve the resolution. Question, please.
Richmond,
Yes.
Hoobler,
Yes.
Sheldon,
Yes.
McKinley,
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to administrative reports. Polly Hulsey.
I did want to just thank Larry and Jeff and Jenny Nickerson for all of their work on the downtown plan. That was a lot of work, a lot of hours that they put in and dedicated to that, so I definitely want to say thank you for that. The library's heating unit went out. We have two different units in that building, one that is supplying the area that the city offices are in and one that's supplying the library at this time. And that unit did go out last week. And I contacted Idaho Power to find out if there was a way that we could fit into one of those programs to help offset the cost. We have received one bid on that, and Kevin is in the process of receiving a couple of additional bids. The bid that we have right now to replace both of the units with the air conditioning units was at $12,000. And so Kevin is getting those bids for us, and once we have those and find out where they come in, I have an email from Todd, Tom at Idaho Power, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to have something work through Idaho Power to have those units replaced. So I'll keep you informed on that, and we're trying to keep Helen as warm and cool as need be in her quarters there. So
I have just a quick question, and you probably don't know the answer at this point, but if we're going to do a remodel and that's all going to be the library, is it the best use of the heating and cooling system for there to continue to be only one unit, or are we going to try to tie it in?
well, there's actually two.
Or two.
Two units, and so I did ask that question of the gentleman that was there the other day, and we have his opinion, but we'll certainly ask that question, and we may even ask that of Michael as well, where he's been there and looked at it, with where the thermostats are currently located, and the possibility of that wall coming out, the relocations of those thermostats. So so we are certainly asking that question. I did receive a call from Dennis Porter, who is the head of the Idaho Department of Commerce, and he's the one that reviews the applications that we're submitting for the downtown project and also the Family Health Services project. And he was very complimentary of the city of Kimberly and what's going on here right now. And he wants to come and visit our city the middle part of November. And so we're going to probably in conjunction with that also have the Idaho Parks and Rec Department come and look at what we have going on. I was very excited when he called because to my knowledge and in talking with Jeff, that normally doesn't happen, that he actually makes a site visit. And then yesterday I had an opportunity to meet with Matt Ellsworth and Mike Matthews, who Matt Ellsworth is the director for Senator Rish's office. And they came to find out what we were doing with all of our grant opportunities and also to offer their help to our community as well. So they've offered to write letters of support for us for a couple of our grant applications that we have right now. They're also trying to help us with our EPA issue right now with the AC unit in our water project. And was just very excited that they took the time to come to Kimberly to see how they could help us. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Polly. Jeannie Rover, City Clerk.
Just one little sideline. A couple months ago, there was a question about how much traffic we actually have at City Hall. So we've kind of been keeping track with the little hash marks of everyone going in and out of the doors. And over the month between the 14th of September and October 14th, we had 1,075 people come in and out that front door. So we do get a lot of traffic. That was just a tidbit back for your information. That's all.
Thank you, Jenny. Public Works Director Rob Wright.
Quick update on Stonegate. They laid the last section of pipe tying into Emerald Street this afternoon. The trench is probably backfilled by now. They started the cammering, videotaping all the sections that they replaced. We'll get a composite. The way he's moving, maybe by Thursday, I'm hoping. So they're able to do 4 sections this afternoon. There are a couple of places where they're going to have to go back in and fix a few that they had repaired, and that the sag was just a little bit over what the allowable limit the DEQ allowed us with. So they'll be going back in there and opening up those and fixing those as well. The proposed plan is, I believe Chad said, paving in on the 16th or thereabouts, because this window's starting to shrink rather rapidly, but they're on top of it. So
Are we going to have pavement?
we'll have pavement,
Great.
hopefully. So
Going back in and refixing that, does that go back to the contractor?
it's definitely on the contractor's dime. They're running mandrel tests as well, which is a process where they take, it's a specific, it's 5% smaller than what the inside diameter of the pipe is, and they drag it through the pipe, and that checks the roundness of the pipe. There was one section, not Burke Construction's pipe, luckily, but a Dave Price section that the mandrel would not go through on the existing. So obviously Mr. Price had never mandreled the pipe.
That was the original pipe that was what was done.
Right, it's actually one of the requirements that DEQ requires, and it's just to make sure that the pipe remains in the proper roundness that it should be. If it gets squished a little bit, the mandrel obviously won't go through, and then that needs to be repaired, because that out of roundness puts undue pressure on the pipe, which can cause a severance of that structure of that pipe. But they moved along rather well. They've been really good to work with. There was, I'm sure they'll fix anything that they come up with smiling faces, and hopefully we'll be able to put this thing to bed eventually.
I've had good comments from the citizens in Stonegate that, it's been dusty and everything, but they've been informed and they've used their water truck periodically every day to try and keep things dampened.
And they were very active this afternoon and starting to clean up so that we can go through and find any fatigue in the asphalt from the process and some of those things, so that we can make sure that we're taking a look at everything and all those things are repaired accordingly. So.
On that note too, I received a very nice email from Mr. Leard out in Stonegate, and I passed that on to staff, and it was just a very nice word of encouragement, and very happy with what's going on out there, and felt like the crew was just so accommodating for them to get in and out of there, and just very nice. So, anything else, Rob?
Other than that, I'm golden.
City engineer, Tracy.
I think Rob covered the Stonegate pretty well, so I don't have anything else, Mayor.
Okay, and Mr. Hallfield's not here. Council comments. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Planning is over.
And
I'm so sorry.
Either in.
I get checking things up before I should be this. I'm sorry.
Just one thing, Mike got a job in Post Falls. His last day is the 31st. The new guy starts the 1st. And we do not have to send him to post. He just graduated from IFU, passed all his tests and stuff. So just a matter of 10 weeks of FTO and he'll be on.
Tell us a little bit about our new car? Other than what you just said.
Yeah, he's, we've interviewed him twice, or 3 times in fact, and of course got a complete background. He's 30, I want to say 32, 6'3", slight build, no military background. He's been on a mission, and seems like a very nice guy. He's a little bit on the shy side, but we'll figure it out. Seems like a really nice. Everybody we've talked to spoke really high of him.
Was he from around here?
He's went to school in Polk County. Originally out of Nebraska, is where he's originally from. But he went to school in Polk County.
Where's he live at?
He's actually living in Polk County right now. He's looking for a place down here. He called me yesterday and wanted to get live in town. And, I told him no, just a matter of probably 15 minutes.
Anything else, Chief?
And he has family, but his daughters live in Torrance, so he's wanting down here. And the instructor in IFU says probably he's going to be one of the guys who'll probably be here for years, because he's not going to be one that's looking for something else. So.
Anything else, Chief?
No.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Jenny Nickerson.
All right.
So you're hiding over there behind the camera.
Well, I'll keep it brief. The Idaho Board meeting, the Idaho Association of Building Officials Board meeting, was held in conjunction with the Green Building Conference, and I just like to pat myself on the back once more for getting that spot on the board. I'm pretty proud of that. This is the first time I've seen the registration page marked full in all the years I've attended, and during this conference I was approached by a number of my colleagues and quite a few elected officials from all over the state that they've heard great things and the wonderful things we've been doing in Kimberly. I know that Polly and Rob and Tracy and Jennifer and Pat and everyone who's attended these conferences, and every time we have a little chance to say Kimberly is great, we do, and it's really working wonders. The whole state is taking notice of our little postage stamp sized city. On a side note, I received some discounted training for land use law entitled Current Issues in Subdivision, Annexation, and Zoning. List price is $359. I knocked it down to $200 just by asking. So it was a fine deal. Every little bit helps for the budget. I'll gloss over the GIS cloud-based capabilities were announced for an ArcGIS. It's the Global Information System. There's some new capabilities that we'll be able to tackle and incorporate into our GIS project free of charge. Cloud-based, it's also going to increase the usability by the general public and anyone who's telecommuting or off-site. Great opportunities for $0, just a quick download and away we go. And last but not least, on the record, I would like to thank Polly for inspiring me to use the resources I have to their full advantage and in creative ways to gain benefits normally realized by larger and more well-funded jurisdictions. I feel that I bring a unique set of talents to the table, but the continued support of Polly, Rob, and our cohesive council Council and mayor inspired me to put in that little extra effort, even when it might not be immediately recognizable on the outside. And after almost a year and a half as the P&Z director, et cetera, I'm still as excited about the job as I was on day one. So thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Burke. Thank you, Mitzi. And thank you, Mayor Dave. I really appreciate being on board.
Thank you.
Jay, I just have a question. You went and did, I guess, a site look at the senior center.
Oh, yes.
And talked about their remodeling plans. And there aren't going to need to be any special building permits needed for what they're planning on doing?
I went over some of the changes with Mr. Kuntz, and all of the things that they've proposed would not require a building permit from the city. There will be some permitting requirements through the state for electrical, plumbing, and HVAC work. And if any of the scope of work changes, I've offered to come on in, and Mr. Kuntz and I can work it through.
Okay. And then I know some of the board members were just concerned that might change. You were going to write a letter.
Done and done. Done and done. I believe Mr. Kuntz has it in his hand.
I do. Thank you very much.
And if you'd like a copy, in fact, if the council would like, I can CC y'all if anyone's interested.
One thing, Jenny, I know you and I talked about updating some of our fee structure.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have you maybe at the next P&Z board meeting work with the P&Z board on looking at our current sign permitting fees and all those fees and see what we need to do to bring ourselves in line. You know, we've talked about this. You know, we've got sort of this one fee fit all kind of thing, and we really need to have a graduated fee scale that's more representative of small requests versus a large request and so forth. So.
And I've been looking into our neighboring jurisdictions, and that's one thing that is pretty blanket across neighboring jurisdictions is a flat fee for signs. Although I believe in the city of Kimberly there's more of a focus on the smaller wall-mounted signs. You might have noticed the new one that the Quilt Barns put up isn't necessarily a billboard, and I agree that I think we need to fee it as such, make sure that we're on a sliding scale for the type of work.
Yeah, and those larger engineered signs, pole signs, things like that you really have to put time in on reviewing. Yeah, I would like to see you and the P&Z board work on those things and then bring that back to the council.
All right.
I agree. Thank you.
It'll be on the agenda.
I would just like to say, too, if Jenny's in the office when you go in, she always says, come on in, let me show you what new things I'm working on. She's always so enthusiastic and working on new things to help us out. I appreciate that so much.
Doing a great job.
Well, it's with good support.
Educated.
Thank you.
Tracy, you get another shot at this.
I still don't have anything.
All right. Again, council comments? Anything further?
I was going to remind everybody that the Kimberly Business Owners Association is going to have their Halloween celebration on Monday. The Kimberly FFA will be having a spook alley at the L.A. Thomas Gymnasium, or the old gym, as many people refer it to, right after school. And then the parade will commence from the gym parking lot down Main Street into the park, and then KBOA will have free hot dogs and punch and lots of candy for all the little goblins. So I encourage people to let the citizens know that we've got some big going on right here in Kimberly for the kids on Halloween.
So
if you show up first, you can have
so the deal at the gym at L.A. Thomas.
Oh, well, the Brandon announced them.
Yeah, along the same lines, the Kimberly Business Owners Association is also sponsoring a Meet the Candidate Night this Thursday. I'm pretty sure most of you know about it. But this Thursday, 6:30 at the high school. And it's just going to be a series of questions asked to all the candidates for mayor and city council. All 10 have RSVP that they will be there, and KMVT's Brittany Cooper will be the one moderating the event. So it should be a good chance to see where the different candidates stand on issues.
And if we bore you over there, we've got an open house again, I believe, at the middle school for the recycling, single stream recycling program that's been proposed will be on the ballot. Western Waste will be there to answer questions in an open house.
That same night?
That same evening.
Okay.
So, if there's no other business, we'll adjourn. Thank you.